The vast darkness of space held many secrets. Among them was the Zenith Empire, a race of beings that had conquered 12 star systems in just 100 years. Their ships were smooth, silver disks that moved faster than light. Their weapons could turn planets to dust. But what made them truly dangerous was simpler. They did not know fear. Commander Grell stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominance *. His tall, gray body reflected the light of 1,000 stars on the view screen. 6 fingers tapped against the control panel as he reviewed the latest reports. Another system charted. He said to his second-in-command, "Any signs of intelligent life?" Officer Merrick shook his head. Nothing advanced. Just the usual primitive species. None with space travel capabilities. Grell nodded. It was the same everywhere they went. The Zeniths found life, but never equals. Their scientists had a theory about this. The Zeniths had evolved without predators on their home world. Their brains never developed fear responses. This let them advance quickly, take risks others would avoid, and conquer without hesitation. "Wait," Merrick said suddenly. His eyes widened as he looked at the scanner. "We're picking up radio signals, artificial ones." Grell moved closer to the screen. Source: a small solar system, 3rd planet from a yellow star. The command room fell silent. Finding new life was common. Finding new intelligent life was rare. "Prepare a scout ship," Grell ordered. "I want information on these beings before we inform the High Council." Frank Miller floated inside the International Space Station, looking down at Earth. The blue planet seemed peaceful from up here. No sign of the wars, poverty, or climate disasters that filled the news. Frank had been an astronaut for 15 years, but the view still amazed him. "Frank, you need to see this," called Lisa Donovan from the science module. Her voice had an edge that made Frank push off the wall and float quickly toward her. Lisa pointed at her screen. "The Deep Space Scanner picked this up near Mars. It's not one of ours." Frank looked at the blurry image. A smooth object, moving too fast and making turns that should be impossible. "Could be a glitch," he said, but didn't believe it. "I've checked 3 times, Lisa said. "It's real. And it's heading this way." Frank reached for the communication panel. "Houston, this is ISS. We have a situation." In the White House Situation Room, NASA Director Alan Wright showed the president the footage from the space station. "We've been tracking it for 6 hours, he explained. "It's definitely artificial and using technology well beyond ours." The president's face was grave. "Options." General Susan Kelly stepped forward. "The U.S. Defender can intercept within 12 hours. It's our most advanced spacecraft." But she didn't finish. "But it's like sending a rowboat to meet an aircraft carrier," the president finished. "Do it anyway. And prepare the public. First contact should be peaceful, but we need to be ready if it's not." On the Zenith scout ship, Commander Grell reviewed the data on humans. They were violent, emotional, and technologically primitive. Their planet was rich in resources. Most importantly, they were divided into nations that often fought each other. "They will be easy to conquer," Officer Merrick said. Grell studied the images of human cities, their art, their wars. Something about these creatures bothered him, though he couldn't identify what. Their emotions seemed excessive and practical. They celebrated victory as if surprised by it. They mourned defeat as if it wasn't inevitable for the weaker side. "We will study them more closely," Grell decided. "Capture some specimens when their ship approaches. The High Council will want a complete assessment before invasion." The scout ship moved silently toward Mars, its advanced systems making it nearly invisible to Earth's scanners. The Zeniths prepared for what they believed would be a simple mission. They had no way of knowing they were about to encounter something they had never faced before. The U.S. Defender approached Mars orbit with caution. Captain Steve Harris stood on the bridge, looking at the red planet ahead. His crew of 30 was the best Earth had to offer, but they all felt the weight of their mission. "Any sign of the alien vessel?" he asked his sensor officer. Nothing yet, sir, but our scanners have limited range. Frank Miller and Lisa Donovan were among the specialists brought aboard for this mission. While the military crew prepared for possible combat, the scientists prepared for communication. If they can travel between stars, they must be peaceful, Lisa said hopefully. Advanced civilizations would have destroyed themselves if they remained violent. Frank wasn't convinced. Or maybe the violent ones are the only ones who survive to reach the stars. A sudden alarm cut through their conversation. The ship shuddered as if hit by a massive wave. "Energy surge," shouted the sensor officer. "Something's appearing off our port side." The view screen showed empty space one moment, then a silver disk the next. It was 3 times larger than the Defender and seemed to glow from within. "All stop," ordered Captain Harris. "Open communications on all frequencies." The communications officer worked frantically, broadcasting greeting messages in all Earth languages and mathematical sequences. Minutes passed with no response. The alien ship moved closer, its surface smooth and unbroken by windows or doors. "It's scanning us," Lisa reported from her station. "I'm detecting energy waves passing through our hull." Captain Harris stood tall. "Maintain position. No aggressive moves." A blinding light suddenly filled the bridge. When it faded, 4 crew members had vanished, including Frank Miller. "They've taken our people," shouted the first officer. Captain Harris reached for the weapons controls. "Armed torpedoes." But before he could finish, every system on the Defender went dark. The ship drifted powerless in space. Frank woke in a white room with no visible doors. 3 other crew members lay nearby. A navigation officer, an engineer, and a Marine. All were beginning to stir. "Is everyone okay?" Frank asked, checking his body for injuries. The Marine, Sergeant Joe Carter, jumped to his feet. "Where are we? How do we get out?" "We're on their ship," Frank said calmly. "They must have transported us somehow." A seam appeared in the wall, widening into a doorway. 2 tall gray figures entered. Their large eyes studied the humans with cold curiosity. "We mean no harm," Frank said, holding his hands up. "We come in peace." The aliens made no response. One approached Frank and raised a device that emitted a soft hum. Frank felt a strange tingling in his head, then heard a voice that wasn't quite sound. "Your species will be studied before full harvesting begins." The cold, matter-of-fact way the alien delivered this news hit Frank like a physical blow. Then, to everyone's surprise, he laughed. It wasn't humor, but the absurd horror of the situation. The aliens froze, then looked at each other. They seemed confused by his reaction. "I don't think they understand laughing," whispered the engineer. Frank realized she was right. These beings showed no emotion at all. Not pride. Not anger, not fear. "You're making a mistake," Frank said to them. "Humans aren't just specimens." The aliens ignored him and began separating the humans for different tests. On the Defender, Lisa watched in horror as the ship's systems remained dead. But her personal tablet, not connected to the ship's main power, still worked. She used it to scan the alien vessel. "That's strange," she muttered to herself. The alien ship was broadcasting signals within itself, unencrypted. They must not expect anyone to intercept their communications. With growing dread, she decoded part of a message. "Planet suitable for colonization. Indigenous species to be processed." Lisa quickly connected her tablet to the emergency transmitter, a simple radio device designed to work without main power. "Earth," she whispered into it. "This is Lisa Donovan on the Defender. We are in trouble. The aliens are not friendly." Repeat, "The aliens are not friendly." In the Zenith ship, Commander Grell reviewed initial findings about humans. "Their technology is primitive," Officer Merrick reported. "But these beings show unusual responses." Subject 1 exhibited an unexpected vocal reaction when told of harvesting plans. "Irrelevant," Grell replied. "Prepare a full report for the High Council. The invasion will proceed as planned." Neither of them understood what they had just started. nor the storm that was coming. 3 months passed quickly. On Earth, nations prepared as best they could. Lissa Donovan's warning had sparked worldwide cooperation unlike anything in human history. Scientists worked around the clock. Militaries trained together. Still, no one truly believed they could win against beings who could travel between stars. NASA Director Alan Wright stood in the Pentagon's war room, looking at satellite images with General Susan Kelly. "The Defender?" Alan asked quietly. Susan shook her head. "No contact since the initial encounter. We have to assume the crew is lost." A young officer rushed into the room. "Sir, ma'am, we're detecting multiple objects entering Earth's atmosphere. Massive energy readings." The room erupted in activity. On screens around the world, dark shapes appeared in the skies. 7 huge disks, each larger than a football stadium, descended over major cities: New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo, New Delhi, and Rio de Janeiro. "So it begins," Alan whispered. In Chicago, police officer Greg Barnes was directing traffic when the sky darkened. People stopped and pointed up. A smaller ship, different from the main disks, hovered over the city center. Greg's radio crackled. "All units, evacuate downtown immediately. Unknown hostiles deploying ground forces." Before he could react, beams of light shot from the ship. Buildings crumbled. People screamed and ran. Greg ran too, but toward the chaos, helping those he could. From the ship, strange figures descended. Tall, gray beings with weapons unlike anything humans had seen. They moved with perfect coordination, showing no hesitation or emotion. In rural Montana, Olivia Patterson sat at her ham radio. As a lifelong radio enthusiast, she had been listening to all frequencies since news of the aliens broke. Her husband and sons had joined the hastily formed militia, but at 62, she fought in her own way. "This is strange," she muttered, adjusting her equipment. The aliens used frequencies humans normally couldn't detect, but Olivia had modified her radio. She noticed that when she broadcast on certain frequencies, the alien communications nearby seemed to stutter. She sent a quick message to the nearest military base. Commander Grell observed Earth's defenses crumble. Zenith weapons easily disabled military vehicles. Human aircraft fell from the sky when hit with disruption beams. Cities were quickly secured. "Resistance is minimal," Officer Merrick reported. As expected. But something bothered Grell. Reports came in of humans using unusual tactics. In Russia, soldiers had abandoned their useless tanks and were fighting on horseback, confusing Zenith targeting systems designed for engines. In Japan, civilians used mirrors to redirect Zenith light weapons. "Their strategies are unexpected," Grell noted. Merrick dismissed this. "Minor anomalies. The conquest proceeds efficiently." A communication from Field Commander Traz interrupted them. "We have a situation in the American region. Humans are adapting to our energy weapons. They're using primitive projectile weapons we didn't consider significant. We've lost a squad." Grell frowned. "Impossible. Their weapons cannot penetrate our armor." "They targeted joint sections," Traz reported, "and they're learning fast." In the Zenith holding facility that once was Frank Miller's home, he had been watching his captors carefully. Unlike other conquered species, humans weren't giving up. The 4 crew members from the Defender had been separated, but Frank had found ways to communicate with others through a system of taps on the walls. He had learned something crucial. The Zeniths didn't understand desperation. They had never faced extinction. They had never needed to fight with nothing to lose. When the guard delivered his daily meal, Frank noticed something. The Zenith moved with less precision than before. Their perfect coordination was showing small errors. They were adjusting to something unexpected, human unpredictability. Frank smiled to himself. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. In the High Council chamber, Grell delivered his report. "These humans are displaying unusual adaptability. They continue fighting when defeat is certain. This behavior has no logical purpose. A High Council leader responded coldly, irrelevant. No species has ever defeated us. Increase force deployment. Crush all resistance. Grell nodded, but for the first time in his life, he felt something unfamiliar. A slight hesitation. A ghost of doubt. The Zeniths had never lost a war. They had never needed to understand fear. But perhaps they should have. 6 months into the occupation, Earth was a changed planet. Major cities were under Zenith control. Humans were forced to work in labor camps, mining resources for their conquerors. But unlike other species the Zeniths had conquered, humans refused to accept defeat. In a hidden laboratory beneath the Andes Mountains, Dr. Ella Martinez worked by the light of old lamps. Once a respected biologist at a university, she now led a team studying Zenith biology. They had captured a wounded alien during an ambush 2 months ago. "Look at this," she said to her assistant. Under the microscope was a sample of Zenith tissue. Their bodies don't produce stress hormones. No adrenaline, no cortisol, nothing. Her assistant looked confused. "How do they respond to danger?" "They don't," Ella said. "They never evolved to feel fear. Their bodies are stronger than ours and their minds more logical, but they don't understand what it means to be afraid." She typed her findings into an old laptop connected to a jury-rigged communication system. This information could change everything. In what was once Seattle, a Zenith labor camp processed hundreds of humans daily. Frank Miller had been transferred there after the aliens realized he had valuable knowledge about space technology. But they didn't realize he was using this position to organize resistance. Using small pieces of metal stolen from workstations, Frank had built a simple radio receiver. At night, he listened to scattered resistance broadcasts while pretending to sleep. "The aliens can't understand fear," he whispered to the group huddled around him. "That's why they can't predict what we'll do when we're desperate." A young woman named Karen looked skeptical. "How does that help us?" "They're still stronger. Because without fear, they have no caution," Frank explained. "They don't check for traps. They don't look over their shoulders. They've never needed to." The group nodded slowly, understanding growing in their eyes. At the former naval base in San Diego, Navy SEAL Kevin Porter led a team of elite soldiers who had escaped the initial invasion. They had been conducting hit-and-run operations against Zenith patrols for months. "We've got new intel," Kevin told his team, pointing to a map. "Dr. Martinez's findings confirm what we've suspected. These aliens don't understand human psychology." He tapped a building on the map. "This is their main communications hub for the West Coast. It's heavily guarded, but there's a weakness. They don't expect suicide missions. They can't comprehend why anyone would sacrifice themselves." The team looked grim but determined. "Our job isn't to win this fight," Kevin continued. "It's to broadcast Dr. Martinez's findings to every resistance cell on the planet. Once everyone knows their weakness, we can coordinate." Commander Grell stood before the High Council, his report causing unusual concern among the normally calm leaders. "Human resistance is not decreasing as predicted," he stated. "They are adapting to our tactics at an alarming rate." The council leader's voice was cold. "Explain this failure." "Humans operate differently under stress," Grell said. "When cornered, they become more dangerous, not less. They choose paths that guarantee their own destruction if it means damaging our forces." "Illogical," another council member commented. "Yes," Grell agreed, "but effective. Our models can't predict their behavior because it defies rational calculation." The council leader stood. "You are relieved of command, Grell. Commander Vrek will implement more aggressive measures." Grell bowed and left, but his mind was troubled. Something about these humans bothered him deeply. They possessed a quality the Zeniths had never encountered. In a small room in Chicago, Officer Greg Barnes, now a resistance leader, planned his next move. His group had grown from a few survivors to hundreds. They moved through the ruins of the city like ghosts, striking Zenith patrols and disappearing. "We got word from the San Diego cell," his lieutenant said. They're going after the communications hub tomorrow. If they succeed, we need to be ready to move. Greg nodded. Tell everyone, when the signal comes, we hit them with everything we've got. He looked at the faded photo of his family. He didn't know if they were alive, but he fought for them anyway. The aliens think they've won, he said quietly. They don't understand that humans never truly accept defeat, and that's going to be their downfall. The mission to the Seattle Communications Hub changed everything. Kevin Porter and his team didn't all make it back, but they succeeded. Dr. Martinez's findings about the Zeniths spread to resistance groups worldwide. A new strategy emerged. Stop fighting like humans expected to win, and start fighting like humans with nothing to lose. In the ruins of Detroit, engineer Paul Davis worked in what had once been an auto factory. Before the invasion, he had designed car engines. Now he created weapons. The Zeniths think in straight lines, he explained to the resistance fighters gathered around him. They attack main targets with overwhelming force. They'd protect their most valuable assets. He held up a small device. So we don't attack those targets. We hit everything else. The device was simple but clever, a signal disruptor that interfered with Zenith communications. It couldn't stop them completely, but it could create just enough static to make their perfect coordination falter. Stacy Williams had been a crop duster pilot before the war. Now she flew a modified old plane on the most dangerous missions. The Zeniths controlled the skies with their advanced ships, but they didn't patrol everywhere all the time. They didn't think they needed to. Ready? She asked her co-pilot as they prepared for takeoff from a hidden airstrip in Nebraska. He nodded, checking the homemade EMP devices in the back of the plane. They weren't powerful, but tests showed they could temporarily disable Zenith shields. Remember, Stacy said, fly low and fast. They don't expect anything to come from the ground. Commander Freck could not understand the reports coming in. Since taking over from Grell, he had increased the force used against humans. More patrols, more weapons, more punishments. By all logical calculations, resistance should have decreased. Instead, it was growing. Impossible, he said, reviewing the latest losses. How are they disabling our shield generators? His lieutenant had no answer. They're using primitive aircraft that don't even appear on our scanners. They're attacking power relays instead of military targets. Vreck slammed his fist down, an unusual display of emotion for a Zenith. Double the guards on all critical installations. Shoot down anything that flies. What he didn't understand was that humans were counting on exactly this response. Greg Barnes led his team through the underground tunnels beneath Chicago. Once part of the city's subway system, they had been converted to resistance pathways. His radio crackled. "Phoenix is flying," came the code phrase. Stacy's air raid had begun, drawing Zenith forces to defend their main bases. "Move out," Greg ordered. His target wasn't a Zenith military installation, but their food processing center. The aliens needed specific nutrients. Without them, they would weaken. Frank Miller watched from the labor camp as Zenith guards rushed to respond to multiple alarms. The resistance was hitting targets across the region simultaneously. With the aliens' communication partly disrupted, they couldn't coordinate their response. Now, he whispered to his group. While the guards were distracted, they sabotaged the mining equipment, carefully making it look like mechanical failure rather than deliberate damage. At the Zenith High Council meeting, the mood was something new: uncertainty. "Commander Vreck's strategy is failing," one member said. "Human resistance is increasing." The council leader stood firm. "We have never failed to conquer a species. We will not fail now." "This species is different," another member argued. "They don't respond to force as others do. They become more dangerous when threatened." For the first time in the history of the Zenith Empire, the council was divided. In her mountain laboratory, Dr. Martinez received reports from around the world. Her theory was proving correct. The Zeniths couldn't adapt quickly because they couldn't understand human desperation. "It's working," she told her team. "We're not winning yet, But we're not losing anymore. She looked at the map showing resistance activities worldwide. Small victories were adding up. The Zeniths still held the major cities, still had superior technology, but they were off balance. Now we need to push harder, she said. Tell all cells. Operation Last Stand begins in 1 month. The humans had found their edge. The aliens feared nothing, and that would be their downfall. 1 year after the invasion began, Operation Last Stand was ready. Humans around the world prepared for a coordinated attack unlike anything in history, not with massive armies or advanced weapons, but with thousands of small, unpredictable strikes that the Zeniths couldn't anticipate. Lisa Donovan had survived the initial attack on the Defender. After months in hiding, she had made her way to the Resistance headquarters beneath the Rocky Mountains. Now she stood before a map of the world, surrounded by communication equipment cobbled together from salvaged parts. All cells report ready, her assistant said. They're waiting for your signal. Lisa took a deep breath. Send the code. Dawn rising. Across the planet, resistance fighters received the message and began to move. In coastal regions worldwide, fishing boats and pleasure craft that had been hidden for months suddenly launched. They weren't heading out to sea, but toward Zenith water extraction facilities. The aliens needed Earth's water for their biological processes, refining it into a form they could use. The small boats approached from all directions, some carrying explosives, others carrying nothing but brave humans ready to ram the facilities. The Zeniths had defenses against large ships, but had never considered the threat from hundreds of tiny vessels. In what had once been Silicon Valley, teenage hacker Andy Garcia led a different kind of attack. His team had spent months collecting Zenith communication patterns. Now they flooded the alien networks with contradictory orders, false alarms, and emergency signals. They don't have security protocols like we do, Andy explained to his team. They never needed them because no one in their empire would think to lie to their own side. Commander Vrek watched in growing confusion as reports flooded in from around the planet. The attacks made no strategic sense. Humans were targeting water facilities, power relays, food storage, not military bases or command centers. What is their objective? He demanded. This pattern is illogical. His officers had no answer. The Zenith military doctrine taught that enemies would attack command structures first. These humans were ignoring the most important targets and hitting seemingly random ones instead. What Vrek couldn't understand was the human strategy, death by 1,000 cuts. Frank Miller's moment finally came when the labor camp's security systems faltered during Andy's cyber attack. The guards were distracted by false alarms, giving Frank and his fellow prisoners the chance they had waited for. They didn't try to overpower the guards directly. Instead, they triggered the emergency evacuation system and slipped away in the confusion. By the time the Zeniths realized what had happened, Frank and 50 other prisoners were gone, melting into the countryside to join local resistance cells. In Chicago, Greg Barnes led his team in what seemed like a suicidal assault on a Zenith patrol. They attacked, then retreated, luring the aliens into narrow streets. The Zeniths, believing humans would always flee from superior force, followed confidently. They didn't notice the building supports that had been weakened over weeks. When the patrol was in position, Greg gave the signal. Explosives detonated, bringing down tons of concrete and steel on the Zenith soldiers. They always take the direct route, Greg told his fighters. They never look up. Lisa Donovan received reports of similar victories around the world. Not major battles, but hundreds of small engagements where humans used the Zenith's predictability against them. More importantly, the aliens were responding exactly as expected, sending reinforcements to main bases, leaving other areas vulnerable. It's time for Phase 2, she told her command staff. Contact Frank Miller. Ask if he's ready for the big one. Her communications officer handed her a message. He's already in position. They got him out. Lisa smiled for the first time in months. Then send the word. Target. Flagship. The second phase of Operation Last Stand was the most audacious plan humans had ever attempted. A direct assault on the Zenith command ship hovering over what had once been New York City. The Zeniths, unable to comprehend such apparent foolishness, would never see it coming. The Zenith flagship hung over New York like a silver moon. Inside, the High Council monitored the strange pattern of human attacks across the planet. They had never seen such tactics before. No central thrust, no clear objective, just chaos that somehow seemed coordinated. "These attacks make no sense," the council leader declared. "They cannot hope to defeat us with these minor strikes." Commander Vreck stood silently. After months of failure, he had begun to doubt. These humans were unlike any species the Zeniths had encountered. They adapted. They surprised. They did things that seemed to guarantee their own destruction, yet somehow survived. An alarm suddenly blared. Multiple small aircraft approaching. An officer reported, "They're on suicide courses." The council leader remained calm. "Destroy them." Outside, 50 small planes approached from different directions. Most were old crop dusters, private planes, even restored museum pieces. The pilots knew most of them would not reach the target. Stacy Williams led the aerial charge, her old biplane staying low between buildings. Zenith defenses picked off plane after plane. But the attack came from too many directions at once. "Keep going," she shouted over the radio. "Remember, we just need a few to get through." Greg Barnes was in one of the planes. He had never flown before the war, but had learned because someone needed to fly. Next to him, Frank Miller watched the massive ship grow larger. "They won't expect us to ram them," Frank said. "Their shields are designed to stop weapons, not objects." 7 planes, including Stacy's and Greg's, managed to crash directly into the flagship. The impacts weren't enough to damage the massive ship seriously, but they created breaches in the hull, just as planned. From the wreckage of each plane emerged survivors. The crashes had been carefully calculated to be survivable. 20 humans, including Frank, Greg, and Stacy, had made it inside the Zenith flagship. "Find the command center," Frank ordered. "Remember Dr. Martinez's map." The small team moved through the ship's corridors. The Zeniths, never having faced an enemy inside their vessels, were slow to respond. They had no internal security protocols. Meanwhile, Kevin Porter led another team that had approached underwater, using scuba gear to reach the ship where it hovered over the harbor. They entered through a different breach. Inside the command center, the High Council watched in growing confusion as humans appeared on their ship, not just on the outer decks, but moving toward the core. "How did they penetrate our defenses?" the council leader demanded. Commander Vreck had no answer. The Zenith military had never planned for enemies who would sacrifice themselves just to create a path for others. When Frank Miller and his team reached the central command node, they found something unexpected. The Zeniths were moving erratically. Some stood frozen, others moved without purpose. "They're malfunctioning," Greg observed. Frank understood. "No, they're experiencing fear for the first time. Their minds can't process it." The humans quickly took control of the ship's communication system. Frank activated the broadcast function. "This is Frank Miller. We have captured the Zenith flagship. Their leaders are experiencing mental breakdown. They can be defeated." He transmitted images of the disoriented Zenith leaders to all their forces worldwide. The effect was immediate. The perfect coordination of the Zenith military collapsed. Some continued fighting, but others retreated in confusion. Without their hierarchical command structure, they couldn't function. 3 months later, the remaining Zenith ships withdrew from Earth orbit. A new ship arrived, bearing Ambassador Leth. Unlike the military commanders, Leth had studied human culture deeply before the invasion and had warned against attacking Earth. In a historic meeting in the rebuilt United Nations building, President Carol Bennett welcomed the ambassador. "We come to negotiate peace," Ambassador Leth said. President Bennett stood tall before the alien. "We accept peace, but on equal terms. Remember what happened here. We do not seek war, but we do not fear it either. The message was clear. Humanity had proven itself. In the years that followed, Earth rebuilt and then reached for the stars. Frank Miller and Lisa Donovan led the first human diplomatic mission to neighboring systems, establishing the Terran Alliance. The story of Earth's resistance spread throughout the galaxy. Other species, long intimidated by the Zenith Empire, found courage in humanity's example. The Zeniths themselves changed, forced to evolve new understanding after their defeat. They had learned the hard way. Those who never know fear never truly know courage. And without courage, victory against the determined is impossible. #the Enand